If you're looking for the best solo build right now in Throne and Liberty for contract farming, questing, open world dungeons, or the tower, plus the ability to easily slot into any group, this is the perfect build for you. Hey everybody, welcome back. HTM here with my favorite build so far for Throne and Liberty. This mage build using the staff and wand combination is basically unkillable, dealing massive single target and AoE damage, all while healing yourself back for a percentage of the damage done. Plus we've also got unbelievable sustain, great utility, and it's just a ton of fun and very easy to play. So I think you're gonna enjoy this one. Let's jump right into it. All right, let's check out the character sheet and talk about stat points and gear. Starting with the stats, I recommend for this build that you start off putting your points into wisdom. Hitting that 30 wisdom benchmark is gonna give you a bonus of 750 mana. This also is going to increase your max mana and mana recovery per point invested, as well as reduce the cooldown of your abilities and increase your max damage. So this is a really good all-around stat to start with any type of magic-focused build. From there, if your focus is solo, I do recommend putting some points into strength next. You get a lot of max health and various survivability stats from putting points into strength. So this is going to improve your defense, max health, health recovery, max damage, minimum damage, etc. So you might think this stat is just for melee weapons. No, it's actually a really good survivability stat, especially when it comes to increasing your max health pool. Now, in terms of where to go next, I recommend just a mix of dexterity and perception. This is going to do things like increase your crit hit chance, give you bonus damage, increase your buff duration, improved hit chance, and so on. So these can be really good to invest in after you max out your wisdom as well. Now, in terms of gear, obviously, our focus is on the staff, and that's going to be our primary weapon. Now, you can get the Heroic Staff of the Resistance from those open world dungeon contracts, specifically for Shadowed Crypt. This is one of the drops that you can get. It comes with critical hit chance and weaken chance. Traits are random, but I did pick up a heavy attack chance on this one. So this is a really good option, especially as you hit level 50 and you start doing those open world dungeon contracts. These are really easy to farm. Speaking of which, another great weapon you can pick up, again from the Shadow Crypt contracts, is the Wand of Skyward Blessing. So I'm using this still for my offhand weapon, which is the wand. This has really good bonuses for this build, including increased perception and mana cost efficiency. Now, when we take a look at our skills and passives, that mana cost efficiency is going to come in really handy. So even though this is a blue weapon, I'm going to keep this. I'm going to upgrade it all the way that I can, and it's really going to help to balance the build. So again, I definitely recommend you pick that one up as well. Pretty easy to get, again, from those dungeon contracts. In terms of other gear, you can get most of what you need from completing the main story quest codex. For example, you can get epic quality chest armor. You can get a lot of blue quality pieces that go with this resistance set. This is heavier armor, so it does help a lot when it comes to, survivability, increasing your melee and range defense. You can also get some really effective jewelry pieces from completing your codex as well. Some of these I think are from the main story, and then some are from the exploration codex for Silas's Abyss, that first open world dungeon that you come across. And so if you get all three of the same type, you'll actually get set bonuses as well, which stack with the other bonuses that we get. So the Rutain's Mysterious set, for example, is going to give us critical hit chance bonuses, and then when attacking enemies with less than 50% health, we also increase our critical damage. So this is a really nice, just little like 3-piece set you can get for finishing off those codex entries. Other pieces are up to you. Obviously, if you have a focus on solo play, I recommend prioritizing some of your main stats, especially max health and max mana. That's going to just help you survive for longer. So even though this ring is uncommon, it's green quality, I've maxed it out, and it's given me some pretty good bonuses to those main resources. Same thing with the Belt of Vigor here. So just focus on the stats, I would say, rather than the actual quality of the items. All right, let's talk about skills next, and this is where things can get really interesting on this particular build. Let's talk about the defense skill first. I went with the wand defensive skill here called Chaotic Shield. And I like this because it has a couple of different options depending on how you actually block the enemy's attack. For the basic defensive skill, it reduces the cooldown of your curse abilities, which can be pretty nice, which we'll see in a couple of minutes. And if you get that perfect defense against a Fury attack, this becomes Healing Spell, which is a healing effect combined with stamina restoration. So this is really good. If you get your timing down to the point where you get those sort of perfect parries off, you get your health back and even more stamina. So that's really nice. That's what I recommend for this particular build. Then you can see a lot of the active skills that we have are actually coming from the staff. That's going to be our focus in terms of damage, which I'm using controller, by the way. That's why I have this different type of view. You can do that on PC with a controller or on console. So I've got my first set of abilities more focused on short, sort of quick damage, quick cooldowns, more for burst damage. Then I have my second set of abilities. These are going to be longer cooldowns for bigger damage, as well as a bit of healing. And then my third set is going to be more the wand abilities and sustain and support and stuff like that. So starting off with those staff abilities, again, for quick damage, we've got serial fire bombs, and I did morph this into focused firebomb. This one just does so much more damage. As I was looking at this, with specialization, you can add a small cast time to this and just like massively increase your damage output with it. So I am using that version of the skill, which you'll see in the gameplay. This ends up being like your most damaging skill, and it's the first skill that you get in the skill tree. Kind of interesting. Now the key with this, and also a main component of the build, is this burning status effect, and this is going to apply 5 stacks of burning right off the bat, and that's going to amplify some of our other abilities, which you'll see, but I do usually start off with this. Then speaking of burning, we have sort of our AoE version of that called Inferno Wave. This can also afflict the enemy with burning, and it is AoE, so you're going to be able to hit multiple targets, and you can even use this multiple times in a row. In addition to that, we have Chain Lightning. This can do a lot of damage as well. It has a really quick cooldown, and this can spread to multiple targets. So this is great for a quick burst of damage. If you need just a little bit extra to finish off an enemy, Chain Lightning is going to get that done for you. And then I do have one ice skill on the skill bar that I wanted to mention. Ice Spear Bombardment is really cool. It throws 8 ice spears at your enemy, and you basically are going to slow down or root the enemy in place with this ice spell. So I do like my rotation with these abilities. Doesn't finish off an enemy. I can root them in place with this and then switch to some of my more damaging abilities. These have longer cast times. So this is going to give me basically some extra space if I'm completely solo to get off those next set of abilities without taking damage. So it works really well there. But speaking of that, what next up is Fireball Barrage. And this actually doesn't deal burning, but it will do increased damage if the enemy is already burning. That has to do with the specialization. So you don't want to actually start with this. You want to make sure that the enemy is burning first with, Firebomb and Inferno Wave, and then you can use this because it's basically going to double the damage of the skill. Judgment Lightning is a very powerful skill in terms of the damage output. Now with the morphs or the specialization that we've chosen for this, we'll be able to use this 2 times in a row. That does require a little bit of cast time up front, but since you can basically double cast this and it can extend damage to nearby enemies, I definitely think that's worth it. And then finally, we have Infernal Meteor. That's the level 50 Meteor skill. I didn't really put much specialization on this just because it does a good amount of damage to begin with. And I think the specialization options are better spent elsewhere. Now, while we're on the topic of staff, one more staff ability that is essential, definitely essential for this build, is called Inner Peace. This increases your mana regen over 600%. That's for 6 seconds at base, and we can extend it up to 9 seconds. Plus, it's going to increase your cost efficiency. Now, this helps to tie in with some of our passes, which we'll look at in a minute for increased damage. But basically, this is your main sustain tool. So after you've been fighting for a while, especially if you're solo, your magic is actually going to start draining. And if you get low, about 20-30%, you can pop this ability and then quickly get back up to full mana. So yeah, you should have this on your bar somewhere. You want to upgrade it as much as possible, and then you want to increase the duration, which we'll check on in a minute. But that brings us to our wand skills, which are basically debuffs and healing. That's sort of the 2 types of wand skills that we're using on this build. Starting with Swift Healing, this is just your basic emergency heal. Quick cooldown, you can cast this up to 3 times in a row with the right specialization options. And you can use this on yourself or a teammate. It's really good, really flexible heal. I definitely recommend you have that on your skill bar. And then once you hit level 50, you can combine that with the Fountain of Life skill. This is area-based, so you basically cast it on the ground, and then you need to be standing in it to receive the heal over time, but it does tick really fast. And so again, this can really get you up to full health very quickly once you're starting to take damage. Now what really ties the build all together though is the curses. And so this is kind of the unkillable or almost like the vampire aspect of this build. And those skills are Touch of Despair and Time for Punishment. So as curses, these interact with one of our main passives, which I'm going to show you next, to actually heal us back. So yeah, this does damage on its own. It's a small damage over time effect, but really it's just the fact that this is a curse, and that's going to help interact with some of our passives. Same thing here for Time for Punishment. It's also a weakened curse, but this one actually does something specific. It reduces the skill damage resistance of your enemy. So this is really good to apply early as well. That's going to make all of your attacks do more damage, obviously. So we want to combine these two curses together, and that's the way that we're going to initiate any type of combat. If you have any questions on this, by the way, there is a written guide for this build that I have over on my website. That's hacktheminotaur.com. I'll have a link down below in the description and the pinned comment if you want to check that out. I'm going to have all the skills and passives and everything else there listed for you. Speaking of passives, let's talk about that. So Vampiric Contract is what I mentioned, interacting with our curse effects. So basically, anytime an enemy is cursed and you deal damage, it restores health. Now, how much health depends on how much you upgrade the skill. I've got this to level 3 rare, and I'm getting about 12%. That's really good, right? So if a, let's say a lightning attack deals 1,000 damage, I get 120 health back. And this affects all of your damage, right? Not just your abilities, but also your basic attacks, which you're auto-attacking all the time. And so you're getting health back every single second of a fight, whether you're using your skills or not. Yeah, I do recommend you start here. This is sort of the unkillable or the vampire aspect of this build. The more damage you do, the more quickly you do it, the more health that you're going to have back. But again, you have to apply the curse first. So that's having one of these two, debuffs on your target before starting to deal damage. Next up is Noble Revival. This is just a no-brainer in my opinion. All of your heals are increased 2% per 1,000 mana. So I think we have like 10,000 mana on the build currently. So we're getting like a 20% bonus to all of our healing. It's really, really good. We also have Devotion and Emptiness. These are all from the Wand skill line, by the way. This increases our healing done by 20%, decreases cooldowns by 10% during the day, and then it increases skill damage and decreases curse cooldowns at night. So there's a night and day aspect of this, kind of tying into that vampire theme as well. Really cool passive. And then our final wand passive is called Wraith's Beckon, and this just flat out increases your curse duration. So that makes it easier to manage your curses. It adds an extra 2 seconds or so. So that's more of a quality of life kind of thing more than anything else. But let's talk about staff passives next, and this is where we start talking about some major damage bonuses. Forbidden Sanctuary is probably the best one. That's why I have it listed first here. This increases your skill damage. That's by 150 at max rank, but it does decrease your mana cost efficiency by 15%. Now, the cool thing about this is as you're leveling it up, the skill damage bonus increases, but the cost efficiency reduction does not. That's always a flat 15%. So you are encouraged to max this one out as much as possible. And then we have things in the build to obviously counteract that, right? Like the wand that I showed you that I was able to pick up from those contracts that increases my cost efficiency by 15%. So essentially it's going to cancel out. And then, of course, we always have Inner Peace ready to go. So if we are starting to get low on mana, we just pop that and then we're back to full. So this is one of the few passives that does have a downside, but it's really a no-brainer because you can counteract it so many different ways. Next up, Mana Amp is really good to increase your max mana and your max health. Level this one up as much as possible. Followed by Flame Condensation that really supports the burning aspect of this build. It increases your burning damage, increases your heavy attack chance per stack of burning, so this one's really good as well. And then Asceticism increases your mana regen, and more bonuses to heavy attack chance as long as you remain stationary, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, quickly, in terms of mastery, let me just go over what I've selected here. For Wand, I went into the Weaken skill tree, so that's giving me mana regen, weaken chance. I'm getting more mana cost efficiency here. So again, you're able to offset anything from that passive. Eventually, I'll also get more curse duration, which is going to be really nice for the vampire aspect of this build. And I'll get some skill boost chance. So I think that's the way to go in terms of the Wand mastery. And now for Staff mastery, I went pretty much with a burning focus. So if you go into the attribute skill tree, that's going to give you more mana regen, more weaken chance, but also burning damage increased by 10%, which is good. Burning chance increased by 5%, and then just bonus magic damage dealt by 5%. So that's a great way to go, I think, as well for Staff Mastery. We're jumping into that skill specialization next. you can see I really put a lot of points into staff versus wand. Wand is really just support. This build is all about the staff skills. But let's do wand first. So Touch of Despair, you can increase the effect duration. That is definitely recommended. And you can increase the radius. So that means you're going to be able to curse 2 additional targets. So remember, we have a lot of AoE damage on the skill. And if they're cursed and they take damage, that's more healing back for you and even your group members. Then just a quick bonus to Swift Healing, consecutive use. Let's use it 1 more time in a row, so up to 3 times. That's what I recommend just for that emergency heal. We've got a buff to Time for Punishment. Again, just increasing the effect duration. Making that debuff last a little bit longer is going to be nice. And that's really it in terms of specialization for the wand skills. Again, you're going to want to conserve most of your specialization points for staff. But let's start with Firebomb. So I didn't realize at first how much more damage that focused firebombs did. This increases the damage multiplier from like 100%, 100 something to over 400%. So it's huge. You can't cast this multiple times in a row, but it really doesn't matter because if you land just one of these, it's a huge damage burst. You definitely want to combine that with mobility so you can channel this while casting, and the radius increase as well. There's no downside to this specialization. It doesn't deal less damage to extra targets. It deals the same amount of damage. So again, if you're stacking your enemies up, if you're stacking them close together, that huge damage fireball is going to hit all of them. For Inferno Wave, we just have cooldown reduction. We have burning, so adding 3 stacks when burning is applied. And we have consecutive use, so you'll be able to use this occasionally 2 times in a row, which is nice. Chain Lightning, we've got the damage transfer effect, as well as no damage reduction. So again, that's really good for hitting multiple targets. For Fireball Barrage, we've got the Fireball Frenzy morph. This is what I talked about with you want to apply burning first. You want to get it to 10 stacks, which is the maximum, because with the Fireball Frenzy morph, 1 fireball is added per stack. So this takes it from 10 fireballs to 20 fireballs. It doubles the amount of damage for this particular skill. It's really cool. You can also apply the cooldown reduction specialization here. That's nice. Ice Spear, we've gone with the morph there, obviously, which changes it into spears. Then we've got the Bind Chance, so that's going to root enemies in place. That, again, is very nice for more of the open world content and even dungeons when you're solo. And then increased damage is recommended. For Judgment Lightning, this is where we have everything unlocked, right? So consecutive use, the tooltip didn't really make sense to me until I tried it. So they should really change how this is described. It adds a casting time to the first cast, but then you can cast it a second time immediately, and there's no % chance to that. So you always get the second cast when you unlock consecutive use. So that's a really good use of 5 points. Then obviously the damage transfer, we want to be able to transfer that damage to nearby enemies regardless if they're wet or under frost. And then we also want the damage transfer specialization, so it doesn't reduce the damage when it's transferred to nearby enemies. So this makes the skill really powerful. And then finally, I skipped this over, Inner Peace, that of course is your sustain buff. All you really need for most solo content is the effect duration boost. So that'll increase it by about 50%, which is really good. Definitely recommend you spend 5 points there. But that is it in terms of skills and specialization. Again, if you have any questions or you need to refer back to something later while you try to build this for yourself, check out the link down below. I'll have everything in detail in the written guide. All right, so how do you play this build? Well, first we're going to start with applying both curses to get that vampire healing active. Follow that up with fire bombs combined with Inferno for even more AoE damage and burning, as well as Chain Lightning. And then finally, Ice Spear. The enemy is still alive. That's where you can do your big attacks, including Judgment Lightning. Remember, you can hit that twice, followed up with Fireballs. And then finally, Meteor. Make sure to reapply your curse as needed to keep that healing effect active. Firebombs back, you can recast that. And Inferno, you can even lay down your healing if you need to. And just recast those damage abilities as they come off of cooldown. Don't forget you can heal up with your Swift Healing as well as regenerate your mana with Inner Peace if needed. But yeah, that's the whole thing. Pretty simple. I'll show you one more time here as we go into debuff this enemy. Hit it with Firebomb and Infernos. Chain Lightning into Ice Spear to create some space. Followed up with our double Judgment Lightning, Fireballs, and then Meteor once it's off of cooldown. Don't forget to reapply your curse to keep that healing, the vampire healing coming, and then go right back into your DPS skills. And then just heal up as needed. You can create that circle on the ground or use your direct heal swift healing. And then inner peace to recover mana as needed. All right, everybody, with that said, that's going to wrap up this staff wand combination build for Throne and Liberty. Hope you guys enjoyed this one and you found it informative. As always, remember, you don't need to copy this step by step. This is simply a template to help you get started. If you have any questions on how I set the build up, make sure to check out the written guide. Link for that is in the pinned comment and the description down below. Over there, I'll go over everything that you need to know, including gear options, skills, passives, specializations, and everything else that you need to know to set this build up right. Over on our website, hacktheminotaur.com, we've got several other builds as well, different solo setups, group builds, and more, so I highly recommend you check that out when you have a chance. But as always, thanks again for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.